With a bit of a lull on the primary calendar, we have some time to talk dollars and cents. Fundraising for not only the presidential race, but everything down ballot. And if we're going to do that, we got to bring on the money man, Dave Levinthal from Raw Story. How you doing, buddy?
I'm doing great. A delight to be back with you.
We did a little bit of commiserating before we started recording on your Buffalo Bills, which continue to break hearts, which they've done for Western New York for their entire existence, right?
Pretty much. So if you're, Vivek Ramaswamy or Ron DeSantis or any of the rest, you can take solace in the fact that there are other people out there who are even feeling greater pain,
Yeah.
given the losses that they have endured than you 2024 candidate, you.
Well, let's go ahead and start with 2024. I feel like unlike last cycle, we haven't had gigantic eye-popping money numbers that have sort of dominated the conversation. Is that because the money hasn't flowed like it did in 2020, or are we just used to it now?
It's because the conversation has not been focused on it. And this is kind of a fascinating phenomenon. Open Secrets, the essential nonprofit organization that tracks money, full disclosure, a former editorial director over there, they came out with an amazing statistic, which totally flew below the radar, which was that about $308 million worth of outside money, so money's coming from super PACs and nonprofit organizations, have flown into the primary season. And that's about twice as much as we had at the same period of time in 2016. So, all right, you don't have to do the math, but it sure seemed like with Jeb Bush and Donald Trump and all the characters running in 2016 that there was just a heck of a lot more money flowing into the system. There was way more spending. But the fact of the matter is when you measure it up even, 2016 to 2024, that actually isn't the case, but nobody would know because Donald Trump has been so dominant, and in Joe Biden, it's just been a cakewalk.
So that is beyond just the rate of inflation. There is, even adjusted for that, there's just more money in the system right now. We're just kind of not talking about it.
And this is not inflation adjusted, but even if you adjust for inflation, it's still significantly more than it was 8 years ago. And it really speaks to, in a way, the Donald Trump incumbency factor. Now, Donald Trump is not the incumbent president, but for all intents and purposes, he is the incumbent president in the minds of most Republicans who are going to support him no matter what he does, what he says, and they are just going to stay with him. Otherwise, we would still have a Ron DeSantis in the race. We would still have maybe a Chris Christie or a Tim Scott, but we don't because he's just proven himself to be that dominant. Now, Donald Trump's supportive organizations have been spending a very solid amount of money, well into the tens of millions of dollars. Nikki Haley's super PAC, called the SFA Fund, it's been spending just short of $100 million at this point. And what has it gotten her? So the Donald Trump incumbency factor is real. The Donald Trump incumbency factor is dominant. And no matter what anyone has done, and no matter how much money has been spent, none of it has really made a dime's worth of difference to the overall trajectory of the race. Simple as that.
The other thing money-wise that I've noticed in this cycle, and you saw it specifically with Ron DeSantis, and it caused his campaign tremendous consternation because nobody knew exactly who the captain was, is the full deputization of super PACs to not only do air cover and flyers and possibly organization and stuff like that, but you saw Never Back Down run his campaign. They were organizing the events. It was only television expenditures, and even then Never Back Down was also buying those that the official campaign was doing. Have we seen even more of a reliance on super PACs for some of these campaigns compared to cycles past?
Yes, and Ron DeSantis is the ultimate example of this here in 2024. And on one hand, we should step back here 1 second to say that, well, what is a super PAC at its core? A super PAC is nominally an outside organization that is not supposed to be run by the candidate's own committee or people. It's supposed to, by its nature, be independent, but can support and spend money with unlimited amounts to support a candidate that it likes, or for that matter, to oppose a candidate that it doesn't like. And in the case of Ron DeSantis's Never Back Down Incorporated super PAC, he had really just taken this sort of to the extreme, and in essence had, if not a wholly owned subsidiary of his own campaign committee, about the closest thing that you could get to having that. Yeah. And on one hand, it seems like it would be a huge advantage, right? Because, hey, the group can raise unlimited amounts of money. It can spend whatever it wants, whenever it wants to. And it's not going to be beholden to the campaign finance limitations that federal law set forth. So you, in essence, have either a shadow campaign or a parallel campaign, or call it what you want. But the reality of it is it didn't work. And Ron DeSantis had a notoriously awful time trying to figure out the lines of delineation between his own campaign committee and the super PAC. And there are still, weak as they are, laws in place that say you cannot directly coordinate between the super PAC and the candidate committee. And as they try to do this dance and they try to beat Donald Trump and raise all this money, it ended up just being a complete, abject, and utter disaster, as we saw in Iowa and in the several days after when game was over.
You know, to use a couple football analogies here, when you have two campaign managers, you have none, just like when you have two quarterbacks, you have none. And the other side of this is that football and politics, especially presidential politics, tend to be copycat leagues. You just take the thing that was done well by another winning campaign and you try to replicate it or goose it or take it to the next level. We've seen increasing super PAC participation. This was the biggest that you've ever done, but much like Dan Campbell going for those fourth downs on Sunday and coming up 3 points short when he gave up 6 points in those decisions, I feel like we might be now stepping back from that. That the next time that we have big presidential campaigns that are ramping up, that the super PAC will be kind of back to what it was maybe in the 2018, 2016 realm of spend money on flyers, help us identify which voters are to be targeted. But other than that, we can run our own events. We can run our own strategy. Thank you.
Right. And everyone is like, oh, an innovation, something new, something shiny. And it seems like it's going to be a good thing, a silver bullet for Ron DeSantis to knock Donald Trump off in the Republican primary. And again, it was a failure. And you better believe that all the other campaigns, such as they are looking at this, and come 2028, when we're talking about that in 4.5 years, you know, lessons will have been learned. I think you've seen along the way a number of different super PAC innovations or experiences where there were adjustments made and recalibrations that were put into place as a result of successes and failures. And we mentioned Jeb Bush a moment ago. Jeb Bush was sort of the ultimate example in 2016 of something that just simply didn't work. And they tried to, in essence, win the campaign by raising beaucoup bucks and spending so much of it on TV. And that just didn't serve the purpose of helping Jeb Bush in the way that he needed to be helped. And so, yeah, like Ron DeSantis in 2024, it's sort of the ultimate playbook for what not to do. And a lot of candidates are going to be studying that very closely.
Let's touch on our two front runners here before we move down ballot. Donald Trump and Joe Biden, obviously leading their charges. It is fait accompli that will be our matchup, barring health situations or a legal situation on the Trump side that shakes up this snow globe. Money-wise, anything surprising or interesting, or are these guys just raising money hand over fist like we have seen front runners do?
So we're having this conversation a couple days before we are going to get official hard numbers from Donald Trump, from Joe Biden, and from everyone else down ballot as to how much they raised, how much they spent, do they have any debt, who are their donors, all that kind of stuff. And I think the easy answer to what we expect we're going to see is that Joe Biden and Donald Trump both are going to have plenty of money all across their entire sprawling operation to run their campaigns in a general election phase. Now, of course, Donald Trump still faces Nikki Haley. There's the Nevada caucuses coming up. There's South Carolina. We've got Super Tuesday, but something, of course, absolutely shocking, revolutionary, and monumental would have to happen for the nature of this race to change away from the victory march onto Milwaukee that Donald Trump is likely going to have. That being said, he's still going to have to spend some money in the primary phase.
Yeah.
We're going to be looking at 9 figures for both of them without question when we get
holy moly,
when we have cash on hand and raised numbers. Maybe a little bit less for Trump on the cash on hand, but we also need to remember, like, what are we actually talking about here when we're talking about money that's being raised? Now, Joe Biden has already come out and previewed his numbers a little bit. A few weeks ago, he said, well, we're going to have a huge, huge end of 2023 to report. So these numbers are going to come out. They're going to show what the candidates had raised and spent during the last 3 months of 2023. And it's very easy to just focus on the candidate's own campaign committee, which is the mothership. Of course, you're going to focus on it. But let's remember that, and Joe Biden did this, that these candidates are going to try to gin their numbers up and juice them as much as they possibly can. And Joe Biden did exactly that. So he put out this vague number. It was a big number. It was 97 million that we've raised, that we've raised all across the board.
97 million for the cause.
For the cause. And what is the cause? Well, that's the candidates committee. It's associated political action committees and super PACs and joint fundraising committees and party committees. And you just kind of glob it all together and you get a big number and everyone's excited and they think you're doing well. So, the money game is so much about the hard dollar, sure, that you actually have, but as much as anything, it's about perception. It's about momentum, and you want people to believe that you are doing well. So, ta-da, they're going to give you more money in the future.
There we go. I also don't know, and this is kind of a meta point, I don't know that there will be an election in my lifetime where money is spent more for nothing. Because these candidates are so defined, regardless of where you fall on the political spectrum. The one thing that all of America can agree on is we kind of have an opinion on these guys. They've been around for a while, that we've talked about them for a very, very long time. So when you look at these gigantic numbers, obviously there's staffing, you're running a nationwide campaign. You want to make sure that you are hiring the best people, that you're deploying them where you need to be, and you can have the cash to not want for anything. But at the same time, what ads are either of these guys going to run that's going to do any kind of change? I mean, I guess negative ads to the other one, maybe to gin up negative feelings. But even then, I kind of feel like we're close to full on the tank in positive and negative feelings about the both of these two.
Well, at a most basic level, you have to have money. Any candidate has to have money.
You need it. And more is better.
Right. Presidential, dog catcher, anything in between. You have to have money, or the odds of you being successful are next to nil if you don't have resources.
Yeah.
But resources can't alone win you an election. Resources alone cannot buy Joe Biden a fountain of youth. It's not going to turn him into 50-year-old Joe Biden. All the money in the world and all the resources in the world are not going to make Donald Trump's legal troubles go away. So if you have the money and you have those requisite resources, well, what are you going to do with them? And I think the answer to that question we're going to see in very sharp relief beginning really in February, in March at the latest, when we go into a true general election phase and the primary season is probably officially over. Nikki Haley may stick around, but let's just say it's Joe Biden, Donald Trump for basically the rest of this year. You're going to see the two of them go at it in ways that are going to be wildly negative.
Yes.
That are going to try to beat up the other person in ways perhaps we've never even seen before in the history of modern politics. So the money is going to be spent on a lot of that. Now, yes, Joe Biden is probably going to do his best, his level best, to focus on successes that he's had policy-wise, the things that he has done as president of the United States during the 3 years that he has been in the White House. He will talk about infrastructure. He will talk about jobs. He will talk about labor statistics and on and on. But at the same time, too, you look at any poll that's out there right now, you look at any study or survey that has been taken, and nobody's excited about Joe Biden. And I don't know if all the money in the world will get people excited about Joe Biden in a way that alone is going to propel him to victory. So what is he to do? Well, he's going to do some of that, but he's also going to use, I think, the bulk of his resources to aim squarely at Donald Trump and talk about issues of democracy, to talk about issues of authoritarianism, to talk about all the things that will happen or would happen to this country, in his estimation, if Donald Trump becomes a second-term president and pulls the old Grover Cleveland and serves 2 non-consecutive terms.
There is no amount of money that's going to make for Donald Trump that will make his legal problems go away. Now, money from Fani Willis's boyfriend, that might do something, but we will see how that plays out down there in Georgia. Let's move down ballot. This is around the time that we start to see big numbers from people in some of these key races. That tends to be some of the earliest signs of who we are going to watch as we go forward, which races are going to be extraordinarily competitive if somebody's coming out of nowhere to raise a ton of money. Who down ballot should we be keeping an eye on?
Well, we've got first of all, to set the stage, we have both the House and the Senate up for grabs here.
Yes,
okay?
very
it's
up for grabs.
It's possible that the Democrats could be in control of the House and the Senate when all is said and done. Entirely possible that the Republicans could be in control of the House and the Senate when all is said and done. So the focus is going to be just that much more on those toss-up races, or maybe the slightly lean Democrat or the slightly lean Republican races. And you're going to have, and we've seen this many election cycles, say the past 4 or 5 election cycles, particularly as online fundraising has come into full flourish and it's so easy to donate. But we're going to see a nationalization in a most major way in those toss-up or close races.
Yeah.
And it's going to involve money that in some of these Senate races where 99% of the cash that's raised in, say, let's just pick on Montana. John Tester is trying to win re-election. He is a Democratic senator in a red state. Well, 99+% of the money that's going to flow into Montana, which is going to be into the tens and tens and tens of millions of dollars, is going to come from anywhere but Montana.
And it ain't going to be from Billings.
It is not going to be from Bozeman. It is not going to be from Helena. As much as, those are wonderful places. It's going to be from California, and it's going to be from Texas, and it's going to be from Florida and New York. And that is going to very much be replicated in many of the other key Senate races across the country, and also to some of these House races, which are not going to necessarily be really like high wattage, high profile on the national news every night, but are going to make the difference between, again, whether Democrats or Republicans control the House, because Republicans only have a handful of seats that give them the majority as things are right now. So if you're, lucky enough to be a resident of, I don't know, New Jersey 7 or Washington 3 or Michigan 8, then you're going to be bombarded with...
You're going to get a lot of ads.
Ads and people who are knocking on doors and the whole 9 yards, and you might be scratching your head saying, well, what's going on here? Why are we getting so much attention here? And the answer is, it has nothing to do with the local politics of your district, and it has everything to do with the politics of Washington and the balance of power on Capitol Hill And that's why there's going to be 15 or 20 or $50 million spent in your little corner of your one state, and that's just the stakes, and that's what is at stake.
So Senate-wise, we're looking at West Virginia, Montana, Pennsylvania, and Ohio. Those would probably be the four most likely blue to red flips. And this is a bad map for the Democrats this year. They've got more liability on their side of the ledger than the Republicans do just because of how the cycle falls. But those four, are there any other big Senate races that you think will see a ton of money?
Yeah, and I think Arizona could absolutely be on that list too, and that's largely going to depend in part on what Kyrsten Sinema does, and the kind of race that she runs. This is going to be, in all likelihood, a three-way race. So that's huge. The New Jersey Senate race, Bob Menendez, I don't think a Democrat is going to lose that race, but it's an opportunity for Republicans to at least cause trouble. Pennsylvania's race is a big one too. So Bob Casey's trying to win re-election there. He's been a senator forever, but he's going to have a very non-Dr. Oz challenger, but still nevertheless a very strong Republican challenge likely there. You could add maybe Wisconsin and Nevada to the list as well. Mm-hmm. Michigan has an open seat. So there's definitely some action to be had, and mentioned Montana, that's going to be one that is maybe the most curious of them all. So yeah, buckle up. I don't think Texas is really going to be in play. Ted Cruz is running for re-election.
Well, let's talk about that, because I used to joke on this show with Hillary Clinton that she was the star maker. Because if you look at her electoral career, there was no better way for you to become a national level money machine than running against Hillary Clinton. Yeah. And I am here to say that we have a new star maker, and his name is Ted Cruz, because whoever looks like they are going to go against him, he is just operating at a certain level in our political frequency that Democrats, just like Pavlov's dog, Ted Cruz is running. Who can I send money to defeat him? Colin Allred looks like he is the front runner to be that guy, and he announced some pretty decent fundraising, right?
He sure did, and it's still a Democratic primary there. He's got a couple of challengers, but in all likelihood, when the votes are taken in the Democratic primary in Texas, Allred's going to be coming out the other end is the victor. But the Beto O'Rourke factor looms large.
Mm-hmm.
You could be God's gift to Democratic politics. And can you actually win in Texas? And O'Rourke at least proved up to that point that no, you couldn't. And all the money in the world, historic fundraising numbers, the legions of support that he seemed to receive could only get him really within about 3 percentage points of a Senate victory.
In a very good market for Democrats. It was the off-year elections. The party in power normally gets slaughtered, and he was part of that trio of very highly covered yet just shy disappointment between him, Stacey Abrams, and the man whose name escapes me that lost to Ron DeSantis in Florida by less than a point.
And you got to take into consideration that the demographics of Texas continue to shift.
Yep.
Every year that goes by, the demographics are different. Ted Cruz also has a track record that is 6 years longer than he did when he last ran for the Senate, and has said and done lots of things that have endeared himself to his base, but also infuriated people who are already predisposed to not liking Ted Cruz and wanting to vote for him. So will Texas become a purple state at some point in the future? Almost certainly it will. But we've been talking a long, long time about Texas becoming a purple state. I don't think anyone can say in all fairness that it's there yet. And Ted Cruz is an incumbent, so he has that as well. Now, Allred is a member of Congress. There is that. He's got profile. He's got his football resume. I mean, he's a compelling character.
He is the kind of person that in conversations that I've had with Texas Democrats, they desperately want in the general and find themselves hard pressed to get through their primary. Now, it looks like Colin Allred is going to get through the primary, but he is not somebody that feels quite as squishy as Beto. So maybe he doesn't have the same zeal and glee from certain voters, but he is somebody that you can talk to your parents about maybe thinking about voting for in a way that Beto didn't really have the discipline for. He found himself talking about Colin Kaepernick kneeling in a race where him shutting his mouth probably would have possibly been the difference, considering how close it wound up being.
Yeah, and Allred's an African-American politician, and that is going to be very appealing to Democrats in the sense that a whole huge segment of the Texas Democratic population and population in general may be invigorated by his candidacy in a way that would be a little bit different than Beto O'Rourke. We will see. And people are going to get very, very sick of hearing of the comparisons between O'Rourke and Allred.
Yeah.
It's the best that we've got at this point, and Allred definitely is making a compelling case for himself to be somebody who at least is going to give Ted Cruz a significant run for his money. And a lot could happen between now and in November where Ted Cruz could also not endear himself to people who are kind of on the fence or are independent-minded enough. And there are a good number in Texas, as you well know, who legitimately will stay home or not, depending on the strength and the compelling nature of the candidates or lack thereof.
Yeah, look, if you want to win as a Democrat in Texas, you got to really light the cities on fire. You got to light Dallas on fire. Austin's going to be blue no matter what. But Houston, these are the places where you need to win, and you need to win at such a significant margin that you can tilt the map.
And San Antonio and El Paso.
San Antonio and El Paso, yeah.
Yeah.
But the real question is, and this is going against Allred, we're not in an off-year election now. This is a presidential election, and Donald Trump is very popular in the state of Texas. So you're going to have the coattails there. And then also, we don't know where this border issue is going to be by the time that November rolls around. I mean, 4 years ago, Joe Biden was talking about reversing Donald Trump's racist policies. This weekend, he's saying, give me bipartisan legislation and I'll shut the border down today. So we went from AOC to Pat Buchanan in 3.5 years from the top of the Democratic Party. God knows where this is going to be by the time that November rolls around, which might be a help to Allred, because if he can run as a shut the border Democrat, that might be a coalition that can go against Ted Cruz, who historically runs anywhere between 6 to 8 points below other Republicans in the state.
Yeah, and it's a absolutely fantastic point across the board, but specifically in Texas. Joe Biden just didn't wake up one day and was like, oh, I'm going to do almost a 180 on my border strategy.
on my day one campaign promises. I'm gonna give me, as long as we can unlock money for Ukraine. Sure, yeah, I'm gonna shut the border down.
I've talked to a few Democrats here in D.C. who are like, it's necessary, but wow, is it cynical? But it's also something too that may be a necessity, not just for Joe Biden, but for key races all across the country where border issues are huge and
big time.
Yeah,
in cities.
Arizona, that has a border, right? Texas, that has a border too. States like Florida, which don't have the same kind of border, well, that kind of matters as well as given the number of migrants, and other states who are feeling the pressures that come with the way that border issues are manifesting themselves in the East and in the West, and these are key states as well. So it's an issue that people clearly have on their mind, and something that I think is going to be potentially a significant weapon against Republicans if the Democrats can say, oh, all this border talk that the Republicans are giving you, it's nonsense. Look at what we're doing right here and right now while we are in power. And it's a definite, very obvious move to undercut the argument that Republicans are making and dinging the heck out of Democrats over month after month after month. It It is an attempt at a game changer. Whether it will be or not, we will see.
Yeah,
But it's a try.
We're gonna see it, and I think to more pursuant to what we talk about in these conversations. Electorally, look, the border is going to be what it is. I've been surprised in the primary that it's the number one issue in places like Iowa and New Hampshire. That is something that the border and immigration is always kind of a higher issue nationally than people give it credit for, but that this is on a level that I've never seen before. When you see the numbers on like Democrats' favorability toward deportations, not even the border, deportations, that's a different story. And part of it is because it's affecting cities like Chicago, like New York, where not only, look, those are not electorally, Illinois and New York State are not electorally in danger for the Democrats, but their fundraising base is there.
Piggy bank.
And a
You
lot
don't want to hurt the piggy bank.
and a lot of those commuter areas in Long Island and stuff like that, those are the kind of districts that will probably decide the House. You know, L.A. This is an issue that as the cities become more focused on it, it is resonant, and I think that there is a reason why this has become something that Biden wants to pull the big U-turn on.
Remember that George Santos guy? Remember him?
Yeah,
in Congress? Yeah. He's there's a little special election coming up there. Well, there's going to be another election in November in that district too. So you brought a perfect geographic example to the fore here. And that's where an issue like immigration is so essential, because that is, for all intents and purposes, a toss-up or near toss-up race where issues such as that are going to be absolutely huge and could actually mean the difference between it tipping red or tipping blue.
I mean, I think we're at what R+2 in the House right now, depending on that Santos special. So. We will see. There is no guarantee that any seat can decide the fate of the House right now. And so you are going to see a lot of that being fought on. And I do think that's part of the reason why Biden is trying to reshape this, even though it's also already pissed off a lot of his coalition. And that's going to be the issue going forward. But anyway, now we're into X's and O's on the politics. Any other big fundraising or money tidbits that you have noticed in this cycle as we wait for official numbers?
Well, this is a little quirky here, but we've been tracking it at Raw Story, and worth noting, I think, in the context of our conversation today, which is, you may remember the Presidential Election Campaign Fund. This is a public, government-controlled fund that presidential candidates would use and that taxpayers would fuel. And maybe you check that little box off on your tax return for $3. That's what we're talking about here. And Alexandria Jacobson, one of our investigative reporters who's been doing some crack work on this stuff, she her most recent story put the dollar figure of the money sitting in that fund, literally collecting dust, at well north of $400 million, soon to be $500 million. So the next time that some member of Congress is bellyaching about, we don't have enough money for this, or we don't have enough money for that, well, you can kind of thank Barack Obama in a way for killing that system dead.
He denied the funds, right?
He opted out of the system in the general election of 2008. John McCain kept his promise and said, actually, I will continue to go forward, being the McCain-Feingold campaign finance reformer that he was, and no general election candidate for either major party has taken that money since. And the system is still in place, even though it is functionally dead, and people continue to check their little box on their income tax return, and the money just keeps growing and growing and growing. And 20 seconds more on this. We asked members of Congress, well, what should be done with this? How could this money be repurposed? Because it will literally take an act of Congress to go and do something else with it.
Raid the fund,
Lots of people have lots of ideas, everything from, well, we need to remake the system and we need to do better. Well, that ship has sailed 16 years ago. But hey, could we give it to charity? Could we use it for some other governmental purpose? Could we just give it back to the Treasury's general fund I don't know, balance the budget or reduce the national
Sure.
debt. Lots of things. But in the meantime, that money just continues to sit there. And I don't know about you, but I could think of a lot of things that I could do for, I don't know, $500 million.
Open up a Betterment account. We can be earning money on this.
It would be amazing.
Come on, come on. This will take $15. You could, or 15 minutes. You could do it on your lunch break.
Give it to the Buffalo Bills to help pay some salaries next year.
I know you guys are in cap hell now,
Yeah, we
right?
really
This
are.
was the big moment. You think Diggs comes back?
Yeah, but he's not a happy man these days.
Well, also he was dropping a little too many passes to be a guy that mad.
He could have caught that 65-yard bomb in the AFC division.
Would have been nice.
That
Would have been a good time. That would have been a good time to have
a different team other than Kansas City going to the Super Bowl. But we digress.
Well, my condolences, as we both have our shared connection with upstate New York, that Western New York always has a soft spot in my heart, and I will be rooting for the Bills next year, as I am always rooting for everything involved with Dave Levinthal. Where can people find more of your work?
You can find it at rawstory.com. I would encourage you to go there, read our work, sign up for our newsletter, and you can always just ping me directly. I'm easy to find, and I'd be happy to point you to lots of fun things that we're doing on the investigative end especially, and there is tons of it.
Well, tell you what, everybody keep an eye out. Thank you so much, Dave.
My pleasure. Thank you.